What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we're going to be looking at the Draft Box 2 leaders, which have been revealed for the Dragonball Super trading card game. We knew they were leaking today, they've leaked today, and although two of them, to my eyes, are fairly uninspiring, one of them looks pretty good to me, and another one of them looks memey as you like. And that's where we've got to start, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start by looking at Hercule, which has the potential to be a ridiculous deck or an absolutely atrociously terrible deck. Now, as it stands, we do only have the back of the leaders. We don't actually know what the front does. Generally, they tend to be very, very similar. So, for instance, if we look at Trunks from Set 2, Union Force, the auto, before it's awakened, during your turn, when you combo with a card that has an energy cost of 2 or more, draw a card. And when you turn it over, once per turn, during your turn, when you combo with a card that has an energy cost of 2 or more, draw 1 card. It is the exact same auto skill. Sometimes, however, we look at androids, for instance, you gain a skill. So before awakening, reduce the cost of android 17 and 18 in your hand by 1. After awakening, you still have that. But you also get an extra 5,000 power for your 17s and 18s if your life is at 4 or less. Although, to be fair, you could see this as a little bit of a reaction, because androids awaken at 6 rather than 4, and they don't get a boost in power like you would usually expect, so that kind of explains that. So essentially those two are the same. Now, they're not always the same. Something like Cell does come to mind as a good example of when they're not exactly the same. So if we look at Cell before awakening, place 1 card from your hand under this card, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with an energy cost of 3 or less and KO it. After awakening, you can put 1 card from your hand under it and draw 2 cards. And you can put 2 cards from under this into the drop and KO one of your opponent's battle cards. So Cell does change quite a bit after awakening, unlike a lot of the other leaders, although to be fair, it is all still very thematically similar. And the reason we included this at the start of the video, the general rule is expect the leader's skills to either be the same before they awaken, or something that leads complementarily into what they have after awaken. We'll have to wait and see. But starting off with Hercule, Saiyan Delusion Hercule, first to notice, 5,000 power is absolutely atrociously, terribly bad. It is utter garbage. We are used to having 15,000 after awakening. 5,000 is terrible. You do get to draw a card when you attack, as we expect from awakened leaders, but it's a skill here that really makes me happy with this. Once during your turn, you may place all of your cards from your hand into the drop area. You can't activate this ability if you don't have any cards in hand. You gain 50,000 power, and if you place 5 or more cards in the drop, you gain triple strike for the duration of the turn. So if you've got a hand of 5 or more, you chuck them all down in the drop, you have no cards in hand, but you then have a 55,000 power leader with triple strike. That is pretty gosh darn exciting. Now, to be fair, there's plenty of ways to stop this. You could negate the attack with something like Wiz's Coercion, or you could even just negate the ability using something like a Cold Bloodlust. If you are scared of something like that, do consider using Fu Shrouded in Mystery. You can even use Overwhelm to get that into play. And of course, if you use Hercule, you're likely to have a lot of cards in your drop, which you can then use to fuel Overwhelm to get Fu into play. And then it says that your opponent cannot use any skills other than on their leader, and that means that they won't be able to use these cards to stop Hercule going off. Although you'd better hope your opponent doesn't have any card with blocker in play, because any card with blocker will just stop this in its tracks. This is a completely all or nothing ability, because the chances are if you don't win with this, then you're going to end up with a 5,000 leader in the active. You've awakened probably at 4, but we don't know. It might be like androids where you awaken a little bit earlier. Certainly androids is a big example of a leader that had less power after awakening, and it did awaken early, so I wouldn't be surprised if Hercule did as well. but you've got full power, you're going to be low on life, you're probably going to end up losing, so it really is an all or nothing. Couple other things to bear in mind here. Do remember expanding Energy Android 17, which allows you to draw until you've got 4 cards in hand. Very useful if you've just gotten rid of all of your cards, although do remember that when you attack with Hercule, you will then draw a card. And a lot of people are talking about the cell chain at the moment and Perfect Force Cell, which is going to make you discard down to 3 cards in hand and blah, blah, blah. If you end up with a 0-card hand or a 1-card hand because your opponent has hurt you with all of these cell chaining malarkey, well, good news. As long as you've got 1 card in hand to discard, you can then basically go and use this skill and you're not losing very much. So Hercule is the big talking point here, but there is another leader that I like more than Hercule. I am a big fan of Caulifa. I think this could be a pretty good card, especially if it has the same skill before Awakening as it does after, which we assume she probably does, because most leaders do. Choose 1 card in your life once per turn, add it to your hand, and then this card and all of your non-black battle cards gain plus 5,000 power for the duration of your turn. So there's none of this overwhelming Mass Saiyan the Mysterious Warrior and all of that, which is a little bit of a shame. But other than that, you could get some good combos here. Think of a card like Saiyan Kaba, which is a 1-drop 5,000, but when you drop it, you can put it up to 15,000 and it gains double strike. Well, now Caulifa comes in and it's using 20,000 with double strike for a single drop. That's pretty nice. Now, you are reducing your life when you use this, so it is a very aggro kind of deck, but I like playing aggro decks in all card games. This seems right up my alley as a leader. Might not be good enough when it comes round, but I'm quite a fan of Caulifa here. We are also getting a Bardock Ape leader, or I suppose if we want to be more specific, it's actually called Saiyan Power Great Ape Bardock. The skill here, once per turn, you can turn one of your opponent's battle cards to rest mode. Now, of course, if you put a blocker to rest mode, it won't then be able to block, which is quite nice. Or you can just put anything to rest mode because you're not able to attack a card unless it is in rest mode most of the time. Of course, any cards that have barrier here will just be able to ignore this. Think something like an Explosive Spirit Son Goku, because you won't be able to be chosen by that particular skill. I mean, this seems like an alright card. There's certainly advantages to using this and being able to stop your opponent doing what they would otherwise be doing, KOing cards you shouldn't usually be able to KO, etc. It seems slightly underwhelming, but there are clearly uses for it. The one I'm really not a fan of is Full Power Son Goku. After it's awakened, again, you draw a card when you attack. That's, most leaders have that. And then the main here, if you've got 6 or more energy, so we're looking quite deep into the game here, choose 1 card in your life and add it to your energy. After adding a card to your energy from your life with this skill, if you have 2 or less life, this card gains plus 10,000 power, i.e. it's then at 25 for the rest of the turn. Now, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and assume that the pre-awakening skill, and I feel quite confident about this, is something to do with putting your life into your energy. And again, you're, really lowering your life. You get your awaken a little bit early, but you are putting yourself at a bit of a risk here. The thing that really puts me off of this card, if you've got 2 life or less, you gain plus 10,000 power. This really has to be a finishing the game kind of thing, because otherwise you're going to be right on the verge of being killed, and you're not really going to have much of an answer if your opponent comes out the following turn. I'm not a huge fan of Full Power Son Goku, but I'm sure somebody can make it work somewhere. Honestly here, I really want to play around with Caulifa running wild, just in aggro decks to see what we can make of it. And as much as I love Hercule as a meme deck, it's got 5,000 power generally, and it forces you to discard your entire hand. It's not actually a good card, but it is a very memey card. It is a card that you can have a lot of fun with, and sooner or later we're all going to lose to this card at a tournament, and we're going to feel very bad about ourselves, and we're all going to be very sad. But that's okay, ladies and gentlemen. It's still kind of fun. But as with all of these, I want to know what you think about these leaders. Tell me what kind of decks you would play them in. Tell me what combos they would work well in. Go nuts in the comment section, but remember the rule: be nice. Do make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy for more rambling Dragon Ball video game kind of stuff. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.